Hello, hello, everybody. It's Heather here.
And it's Deb. Hello.
Happy whatever day and time you're listening to this. And this is Reluctantly Woo Woo, and this is episode 8. We're talking today about signs that you need emotional healing. And before we jump in, as usual, we want to talk about why reluctantly woo woo. And we define woo woo as the things that feel unbelievable and defy the logical mind, but somehow work. So all those things that like people talk about, and you're like, that's a little bit wacky, right? Like we want to weave those things into our conversations because we know that there's more people like us that are tired of the conventional route and want to try something different and are reluctant to, as I definitely was by any stretch, and definitely skeptical. Even still, the work that I do, I'm like, hope this works, but I know that it does. And it's okay to be skeptical about things. So that is why reluctantly woo woo. And today we're talking about the signs that you need emotional healing. And there's been times in our lives where we've either heard somebody say or we've said ourselves, like, I'm fine. I don't need any help. And we all know that that is not totally true, right? That we all need a little help from outside sources. And when it comes to our life, right, our emotional health is the foundation of every single thing. If we're struggling emotionally, our entire life is a struggle. If we're emotionally resilient, then life is much easier. So today we're just going to talk about a few of the telltale signs that you might benefit from emotional healing. There's way more than what we're going to talk about today. We're going to do our best to keep a short episode today, and then we'll jump on and do another call on some of the other ones. So Deb, why don't you just kind of circle back about what does it mean to be emotionally healthy?
Yeah. So we would say that emotional healthy is when you feel fully integrated, right? So the parts of yourself that have some past traumas, maybe, when you think about those, you don't feel that emotional charge that you maybe once felt. So you may have memory of some things that have happened to you in your past, but those don't control you. They don't define you. They have a lot less impact over your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And when you're emotionally healthy, I think I've said this probably in pretty much every episode, but you can recognize that you're in control. You are in control of your emotions, your feelings, everything really that's going to occur in your life is within your control. So when you have found that balance and that resilience, things can come and go in your life, but you will stay relatively even keeled and be able to weather that stuff a lot more easily.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? In the past episodes, we talked about like some reasons why people don't want to heal. And something that we didn't say then, but what you just said is that a lot of times people get this idea that will be boring. Like it will just be boring to not live these emotional highs and these emotional lows. I know I definitely thought that, right? But reality is like when you're able to stay in this like neutral place, life is so much more fun and enjoyable. That's what I found. I don't know about you,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't know. Drama to me is not where I find my entertainment. I think for some people though, I mean that's we can probably lump that into one of the signs though. If you're feeding off of drama, there's perhaps some work to be done there.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So the first sign that we want to talk about of that you need emotional healing is when you have a lot of unexplained physical ailments. Okay. This is something that is challenging for a lot of people to grasp because they think, well, I was just in an accident, so that's why I have this pain. Okay. But reality is that every single thing is an energetic frequency, right? And everything in our body is a vibration. And those vibrations either create balance or imbalance in our bodies, producing either health or dis-ease. And when we have dis-ease in our bodies, the root will always go back to something emotional. Right? And so if you can't figure out why you're struggling physically, it's time to really like look under the hood and see what's going on emotionally. Deb, I don't know if I'd ever told you, and to everybody listening, my experience when I worked with Dr. Bradley Nelson, who created the body code. Did I ever tell you about this?
I don't think so.
So when I was 20, I was in a car accident. And this was 3 months after I had lost my baby, which I've talked about before. And so I had trauma of losing my first child at 19, 20 years old. Right? And then 3 months later was in a car accident. So a lot more trauma. And I was riding in the bed of a truck, which everybody did at the time. And it was totally normal, right? Because this is in 1994 and it was not unusual to do that. And the
Mhm.
guy that was driving didn't realize it. And he wasn't drunk, but he didn't realize it was like midnight. He didn't realize that the intersection was a three-way intersection, and he hit an abandoned house. And because I was laying in the bed of the truck, my head like jammed into the part of the truck. And so we went to the hospital, and the doctors, did X-rays and everything. And this shoulder, like, always just it felt like there was 1,000-pound weight on it. And then they were like, "Oh, you're fine. Like nothing was broken." So they sent us home. So that was at the age of 20. I had serious back issues all the rest up until I had this experience with Dr. Nelson using the body code. And I had gone to chiropractor after chiropractor, and I would literally leave the chiropractor. And by the time I got to my car, my back would be out of alignment again. And it was so annoying. And then I just always thought, oh, this was because of the car accident. So when I went to a body code, after I gotten certified as a body code practitioner, I went to a retreat, and Dr. Nelson was working on people, and he asked if there's anybody who wanted to, um, who needed like an issue to be worked on. So I was like, oh my gosh, please me. And so he had me come up on stage, and he asked what the issue is. I said, I've had this pain in my back, and it was my right lat. And at this time I had started doing aerial as well. And so that was really aggravating it. And I he does work on me, and he finds that there is a trapped emotion of self-abuse in my large intestine. Now, I've had digestive issues majority of my life, and some of that was contributed to food, right? But there, like, my stomach was where I hold a lot of stuff, and struggle with self-esteem a lot, right? And self-abuse in the body code, when it comes up, it means basically like a lot of negative self-talk, not necessarily like cutting and that kind of stuff, but just like constantly abusing yourself with how you think of yourself. And so when he said that, I was like, huh, yeah, that kind of makes sense, right? And so he released the emotion, and I went and sat down in my chair. And within minutes, I could feel this gas bubble just start to rise up. And it felt like the size of a grapefruit. And it was rising up, and I could feel it go over, and I could feel it go down. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I need to let this out so bad. And I was so afraid that if I did, I was either going to hit the ceiling, right? Or if I didn't, I was just going to like explode to the people around me. Like, it was so painful. So luckily lunch was like very shortly after that, and they let us go to lunch, and I run back to my room, and it was like one of those where you're like crouched over, your like stomach is cramping so bad. I go back to my room, and I was sharing a room with one of my best friends, and I go to the bathroom, and not to be gross, but like most of it was air. It wasn't that much physical matter, right? But it was just like this explosion. Go to the bathroom, then we go to lunch. Come back from lunch, I go to the bathroom again, because anybody knows me knows I pee a lot. And I go in there, and as I'm going to the bathroom, I realize, oh, I didn't flush the toilet from before. Don't ask me why. I flushed it while I was going, but it wouldn't flush. And that it was just the water just coming back up me, because apparently I had clogged it with the matter that I did drop in there. And I'm like trying to stop myself from peeing, trying to like stop this thing. I'm in the hotel. It doesn't have a thing nozzle to turn
Right.
off. It was like, and my friend is not helping. She's just laughing at me in the other room. And I'm like, help, you know? So I finally get the water, and the water's like just at the hairpin of like where it's about to overflow, right? And it's because this is now poopy water, like in the toilet. And so I have to call housekeeping to get them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. But I was laughing because I was like, man, that emotion was such a bugger. Like, that did not want to go down without a fight. Right.
Right.
And so within about 2 days, that pain in my back gone. And I thought so fascinating, because I was like, well, that's just from the accident. He didn't even work on anything that had to do with the accident. Right. I mean, he didn't ask like anything specific about the accident. It was like, what's the pain, what's causing the pain? And it was a trapped emotion. It wasn't a physical trauma from the accident or anything like that. But when I go back and think of that time, I think about how I had this massive trauma, right, of losing my baby, and then this massive, that was emotional trauma, and this massive trauma being in this car accident, and all of these things like just got stuck in my body because I had no idea how to process it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, that's just, one example that I've experienced. And, most people, when there's some kind of dis-ease in their body, there's always an emotional component to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So have you ever had any experiences like that where you're physically not well,
Mm-hmm.
but it had to do emotionally?
Yes. I think the ones that have been, I mean, I think I could list many. Um, I've had some that are very, very interesting. And I think at this point, I always tune into those. And I know we're going to touch on it, but we both had brought up the Louise Hay. Oh, get it in the camera.
Hmm.
You can heal your life. Um, but one that always happened, well, it actually hasn't happened in a long time. So that's interesting. In her line of thinking, because she will say that everything has a metaphysical cause, right? So
Right.
I would often get knee pains, and my knee would get
Hmm.
really stiff and swollen and hurt, and sometimes it would like kind of dislocate a lot. And once I started tuning into that, her mantra for knee pain, knee issues are typically a resistance to change. And
Hmm.
so when I started tuning into that, every single time my knee would be really acting up, it would be when I was in some sort of transition or something needed to shift in my life. And so, yeah, it would be a reaction to resistance to change. And I think the mantra, I mean, we can dive a little more into Louise Hay's teachings, but the mantra that I would write on my mirror to work with that. And every time I even notice a tinge of something in my knees now, the mantra is I bend and flow through life with ease, right?
Hmm.
So I just would keep repeating that to myself, because every time my knee will start to be a little achy, like, okay, what needs to change that I'm resisting? And now it just so quickly I can be like, I know exactly what it is, and then the knee pain will go away, right?
Yep.
I mean, and
Yeah.
that's actually before I knew the emotion code. I don't know off the top of my head if there's anything that's specifically related to knees, but with the emotion code, it's not necessarily that it will locate where it's not
Hmm.
quite the same. So I don't know that I have found any trapped emotions that have related to that, but resistance to change. Do you know off the top of your head where that might fall?
Well, so for every single person, it's going to be different,
Right.
right? Whatever trapped emotions and trauma that they have are going to be different. Like if that came up for me, it's going to be different for you, right? Because
Sure.
it could have been an event for me that happened when I was 5. That there's a trapped emotion, where for you it might be an event when you were 15. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I love about using the body code for this stuff, is it literally goes to everybody's individual, right? And
Mm-hmm.
deals with, like, it's not this blanket, here's one thing, right,
Right.
that works for everybody. I think that the mantras and affirmations, whatever we want to call them, are all great, right? And they bring things to the surface. But there's also that going into your own individual, like, rewiring and getting that energy to move out is helpful,
Right.
just like
And
we
where it
talked about.
sticks is definitely going to be, I think, in the emotion code, they'll talk about it distorts your energy field. So where it
Yep.
lodges, that's probably less significant, really, than what the actual trapped emotion is. Because for you to
Yeah.
have it have been in your shoulder, yeah,
Hmm.
logically you're thinking, well, that's from the accident. But
Well, and so that's a big thing to think about, is that when we have physical accidents, right, like, that weakens that particular area. And then when we have stress, it'll will that because of that energy in that space is weakened, right? Any kind of, like, stressful, or we'll call, like, I don't like to use the word negative, but, like, undesired experiences or emotions, is going to go to that area, because, like attracts like. So it's like weak there, and it's just going to keep, like, it's going to suck to that area. Okay? And
yeah,
so why people tend to have tendencies in their bodies of, like, having a weak area, is because there may have been some kind of physical, like, ailment, or physical injury, right? And then it just keeps going to that. I had years ago, I had sprained my ankle playing football, and I'm super stubborn. I was like, I'm not going to the doctors. And I didn't go to the doctors for like 2 weeks before, like, after. And at that point, it's like kind of too far gone, right? I could, like, was on crutches for a bit and everything, but, like, this thing would flare up when it got wet, like, all those kind of things. And I, again, had somebody work on it. Haven't had any issues since, right? Um, and in my shoulder, like, I will say that that pain in my shoulder was It was like on a scale of 0 to 10, it was a 20, right, for about 14 years of my life. Um, and well, I'd say I got certified. That was 1994. The accident happened, and I got certified in 2015. So whatever the math is there, um, and I, can honestly say, like, if I get super super stressed every once in a while, I'll feel a twinge in that area, right? But it's like a level one maybe compared to what it used to be, and
Right.
so
I think it's when
there.
people are dealing with a chronic ongoing pain, you do become a bit, I don't want to say immune to it, but you desensitize to it in some ways. You get so used to that level of pain that you don't even recognize anymore that something's going on, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah. If you're having like dis-ease, consistent dis-ease and imbalances and not feeling well, like make sure that you look at the emotional component and energetic component as well. Because
Mhm.
you can keep going to doctors, you can keep going and getting painkillers and all those things, but all you're doing is covering up the actual problem. And you have to look at energetically what's going on. I'm looking because I had put this quote from Ram Dass a little bit ago on my Instagram, couple, I don't know,
I love Ram
July
Dass.
30th. Yeah. It says, curing a disease from the body is not always possible, but healing from the soul level is always possible.
Oh, I love
Uh,
that.
right. And I think it's
Mhm.
important to know because a lot of times people get into this like woo woo world of energy and stuff and think, oh, well, if my energy is just great, then I'm never going to get sick.
Right.
I'm never going to die. And that's a bunch of BS because we're all going to die, right? Our physical
Ram
bodies
Dass
will.
died.
Yes. 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 I
People
mean,
have mastered it at his level, and he still is not invincible.
exactly. So, like, we want to use this stuff to be able to have a healthy body and also our relationship with that disease is a big thing as well. So it's like
Mhm.
if you have the unexplained physical ailments and you do all the energy work with it and emotional work to it, right? And it's like, okay, all of these things like I've paid attention to, right? That this thing still is happening. Sometimes it's the what's your relationship with it? Like, are you willing to love and accept that it's there in your body and live a really happy, contented life, like with that thing that's going on?
Mhm.
That's mastery. Right?
Mhm.
So, Deb had mentioned about Louise Hay. Her book is You Can Heal Your Life. And I definitely recommend that.
Mhm.
But also, schedule a session with us. Like if you have physical ailments that you just can't seem to get rid of, right? Using the body code and the emotion code is a really great way to basically open up space for you to see more of what could be contributing to this.
Yeah, and I think
Right?
it also will, the physical healing is still going to happen, right? Particularly if you're talking about an injury or a very old injury, but releasing that trapped emotion makes the space for that physical healing to take place. And I think quicker too, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I had a client who her daughter was having trouble breathing. Okay? And she was like 13, 12 or 13, I forget. And she just could never catch a deep breath. And I totally get that because I have had that issue as well. And so I did some work on her. And the girl, I never talked to the daughter at all. Okay? It was always just relaying back to the mom what came up. And then it's so funny because the mom's like, oh yeah, that's not even a thing now. She's fine. Because there was this emotional charge that was causing her body to contract, and those all of those things are messages that your body's like, hey, pay attention, something is not right here. Right?
Hmm.
Oh gosh, I heard this great quote, now I'm totally going to forget it, but it's something like something along the lines about your body whispering messages to you. you know oh,
That
such
is
a great quote.
so true, so true. And I know for me at this point, I get those messages so quickly. I can just tell. Like I think I've shared I have a they called it a birth defect, but I just call it my mutant kidney, which sometimes bothers me.
Hmm.
Um, but I can tell so quickly now when like something's up, and it's such a beacon. I don't know. It's interesting because I don't even know if I shared this off air, but the short fleeting relationship that I just went through, interestingly, the entire time my kidney was bugging me. And then
Yeah.
I'm like, God, why is it flaring up? Just
Well,
like since I've met this person,
mm-hmm.
that person has kind of, I encouraged an exit and just realized a couple days ago, I'm like, oh, kidney's been feeling pretty good. It's very interesting.
Right. I've had, not to like, this is like TMI, but I've had relationships with people where after the first time we were intimate, I would have weird things show up on my body. I was one guy where my leg, and I see like the next day I had this big like round rash on my leg. I was like, what the heck is that? And then this other guy that I was with, like I started getting yeast infections. Like, that is like a sign that your body's like, no, like
Get
don't
away from this
like get
person. I
right.
had like this is
My,
a few years ago now, but the very, very first time I even met this guy, like randomly met him and literally broke out in hives, which is not something that ever happens to me or has happened since. And I
mhm.
was, like I thought there was a connection there. I saw him for, I don't know, probably a couple of months. And it continued to get worse and worse. I had gone to the doctor, and this was before I was really into this space, but I was going to the doctor. They
Yeah.
were trying to give me freaking steroid creams, which I've always been like, no, I don't want to take that. I mean, I've always been in this space. I wasn't this deep in it, but long story short, eventually just stopped seeing that person and it magically stopped
Cleared up.
happening.
Right.
And then didn't
Yeah.
talk to him for 2 or 3 months and he resurfaced like they always do. I get a text from him out of the blue and I was like, oh, why am I hearing from this guy? And no joke, like instantly started to get like all prickly. And I'm like, whoa, that is weird. Like I could feel like they were starting to form. And I'm like, yep, no, we're shutting this down. This person
Right.
is not good for me.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
super interesting.
Yeah. So your body will always give you clues, right? If you're constantly feeling contracted, constantly feeling run down, constantly feeling exhausted, fatigued, right? It is helpful to look at all the different areas. On our last episode or 2 episodes ago, we talked about looking at your physical body, your emotional body, your energetic body, your mental body, and your spiritual body. And you'll hear us say that over and over and over again because though all of those things need our attention. But if you're only looking at the physical body and looking at it as separate from your soul and your spirit, you're constantly going to be putting up like constantly going to be
Mm-hmm.
covering things up. You have to give it the attention on the emotional and energetic level and spiritual and mental as well.
Right.
So physical ailments, right? Unexplained physical ailments are definitely signs that you need emotional healing. And there's a
Even if you think
lot more.
you can't explain them, I want to add on to that. You may think you can explain them, like your car crash example,
Mhm.
but there's some unexplained stuff to uncover as well.
For sure. Yeah. So we will keep talking about more of these signs that you need emotional healing. But if you're feeling like, oh gosh, I have this thing that just won't seem to go away, then, and maybe there's something here that I want to address, reach out to myself. You can reach me at heatherespo@gmail.com or to Deb at deborah.karen@gmail.com. Right. And, we'd love to help you out with this. And again, we totally get that it's like, this sounds a bit wackadoo. I get it. Totally get it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've tried all the other stuff, why not?
Right.
What's the harm? Because you
Exactly.
tried everything else and it's still an issue. You got to look at all the other areas.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to wrap up with that. We will jump in. There's a lot of other ways, lots of other signs, that you need emotional healing. We'll leave this one and leave you thinking about this one for now, and just think like, maybe I've had this thing and it hasn't gone
Mm-hmm.
away. Maybe there's something else there.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. All
So
right.
let us know if y'all have any questions and if there's any specific thing that you want us to talk about. We'd love to talk about that. And until next time, stay healthy, stay well. Bye.
Bye.